Okay, so we're recording now, everybody. So welcome back, Melissa.
Thank you.
And yeah, it's nice to see you again.
You
And
too.
Michael, of course, and Cheryl. We're getting the regularly. I spoke with or reached out to our other regulars, and they're sorry they can't make it. This particular webinar, we just want to get right into it. Shane has a lot for you right here. It's going to be packed. At the end, I reached out to Chris and Kobe, who were last week, and to ask them if they were able to implement what we learned last week, and they did, and they have some really good response. We're gonna get that to the end at the end of the webinar. And if Melissa, you tried something as well, let us know. But we'll do that at the end of the webinar. Shane, take it away.
All right, guys, welcome back. Nice to see so many sort of faces again. So let's talk into it. We're moving through our Culture Hacker series, and the whole idea is we really want to focus in on this idea of engagement, this idea of now shifting it to a coaching conversation, particularly with feedback. So I really want to make sure that we sort of start on this process. I know a lot of you have seen this before, but I really want to make sure that we're really focused in on this idea that it all comes back to this idea of attitude. And attitude is such a key part of all of this. And I've kind of mentioned it in each one. It comes back to my background in hospitality, where we used to talk about this idea all the time that when it comes to your staff, you've always got to be considerate of attitude, particularly how attitude was impacting those around them. And so this work and this understanding of attitude really drives everything that we think about when it comes to culture, because culture is really this collective mindset, attitude, and feelings that employees have about what they do and who they do it for. And I keep coming back to that because I want you all to understand that that is really the focus of what leadership is all about. It's really about your ability to inspire hearts and minds. It's about managing this mindset that goes on with your employees each and every day. And again, I go back to it. It's about the collective. You'll always have exceptions to the rule. Just remember, as I said, this hearts and minds, it comes out in behavior. Behavior is reputation. And of course, that reputation, when it comes to being online, really starts having a lot of impact about what brand is. And that's why I think it's really important, as we often think about that, Tony Hsieh said it very well, is that brand is just the lagging indicator of culture, which means culture is really your foundational element today of what brand is all about. And I think this is why culture has become so important, and ultimately why employee experience is really becoming just as important as customer experience. And we've kind of taken you through this series. I wrote the book from a perspective of trying to understand the employee journey and trying to understand the different mechanisms, activities, the different ways managers influence the employee at work, and trying to focus you in on some of these key moments and opportunities that elevate hearts and minds. And on the flip side, that if we don't capture in that moment, how it can certainly reduce morale, lower productivity, etc. So a lot of what we've been doing over the last sort of several weeks, this is I think the seventh webinar that we've done, is kind of going through some of these different elements and ways that we are really focused in on our employee journey. Today, we're going to talk about coaching, and we're going to talk about feedback, which covers recognition, accountability. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this. And I want to really kind of use today, because for me, coaching and this idea of feedback's not only one of the most important mechanisms, it's also the one that we see in our research and we're out there in the operation that is done least well. So I'm going to take you through some different things that we've learned and some different things to keep in mind as it comes to feedback and coaching. So listen, start with this idea of what coaching is. It's a leadership behavior. And as I said, I think that's where we have to kind of piece, is that leadership is often talked about as something that you're created or born with. I believe it's something that you learn. And particularly with coaching, is you can teach people to coach and give better feedback. And that's why I want to share with you today some of the things that we have learned, some of the models, some of the pieces that we kind of keep in mind that you can take back to your management teams, because this is really one of the key elements that drives success or failure when it comes to employee experience. So I start with this. Some of you have been through our webinars together, have heard me talk about performance before. And I want to make sure that we start with this. Performance is defined by what is achieved against how it is achieved. I would say traditionally, a lot of organizations only cared about what was achieved. They only cared about the results. I've told in other seminars the story, we work with BMW, and the story that we went to, we have about 460 dealerships that we coach across the US, North America. And one of the things that I always remember is a story from a couple of years ago. We go into this huge dealership. It has about 20 salespeople on the team. And we look up on the wall and it has the salesperson of the month. And it's the same person for about 2 years. This guy is up here on the wall. Michael, he's the guy. And it's like, wow. And so what we understood as we started to dig into learning about the culture of this dealership was that Michael was the top salesperson. And when we talked to the general manager, couldn't talk enough about Michael. Now, when we started to talk to the other sales team, what we learned was Michael was a jerk, which means while he had the top sales numbers, he was delivering results, he was doing it. He was backstabbing. He was not very nice. He was doing every little trick under the sun to ensure that he got the numbers he wanted. When we took our information back to the general manager, and we spoke to them and we sort of said, Michael's your problem. If you want to really drive culture and drive sales and drive customer experience, you need to think about Michael. And the general manager just kind of lost it. He's like, what are you talking about? Michael's the best guy. I wish everyone was like Michael. And it was like this ongoing kind of sort of piece. And we left and he wrote this letter that, how can we come in and tell him that his top salesperson is the problem? About 3 months later, we got a notification that Michael had to be let go. He had really stepped over the line in terms of harassment, and they didn't have an option. So it wasn't the general manager's decision. It was from a much higher. Anyway, what was interesting is the general manager invited us back in. And what we saw was in that 3 months, it was 3 months sort of after he had been let go, the overall sales numbers had increased. 18 of the 19 other salespeople had better numbers than they did 3 months ago. And what it talked about and what really highlighted is that you can't just focus on the results when it comes to performance. You got to talk about how it's being done. And if you remember back in one of our earlier webinars, we talked about the importance of values. Values should define your how. And so why I want to get performance out is that when you're coaching is about performance. If you start to think about what it is, it's just the process to improve performance. And that means that you've got to be focused on what's being delivered, but also how it's being delivered. And so that piece for me is really critical to this. You can't just be talking to someone about their results. You have to be coaching them to how they do business. Do they adhere to the values? So when we talk about being a great coach, remember, coach to the what and the how. And what we found is that, through our research and sort of what we've seen through these various projects that we've done is that coaching really becomes one of these things that drives so many positives in your business and culture. It's about obviously helping people get better. If you look particularly at young people, they talk about the importance of being challenged, being developed, being groomed. This is where the coaching comes in. So very important in terms of lifting people up. It's essential, of course, to be able to deliver great client customer experiences because, again, you've got to still deliver that what. So, again, it's really important in terms of customer experience that we're actively coaching. And when it's done correctly, the number one thing that we learn is that it makes our employees feel good. They really do provide value on it. They feel supported. But the most important thing is they feel that there's an investment in them. They feel valued. And this is such an important piece. When you talk about hearts and minds, when people feel valued and supported, which is what our coaching research suggests, this is a really positive for the overall the organization. And as I say at the bottom, remember, it drives performance. So for us, it's really important that this role is certainly one that is taken on by your managers. Now, the foundation of coaching is feedback. And this is where we start to get in. We talk to a lot of managers and they go, yep, I'm a coach. I get coaching. I've read all the coaching books. But what they aren't good at is feedback. And we know that because every little bit of research we look at keeps having employees say, I want more feedback. Well, if managers were giving feedback, then this shouldn't be such a high number. Across the board, it is always in the 60 to 70% range. So we're knowing that there's something missing out there. So the two things I want to get across is two types of feedback, informal versus formal. And as you're going to see in a couple of moments, that the key is being able to deliver both. What I find is that most managers think of feedback only in the formal sense. Formal feedback is basically when you write something down. Informal feedback, which is the skill that people struggle with, is about having everyday casual conversation regarding how and what's being done. And this is where a lot of managers struggle. They're not good at just having a casual conversation. They're extremely good at the formal kind because formal is usually documentation. They like to write it up. They're comfortable with that process. But the really great coaches are able to move and improve performance with quick, casual conversations. And they can be very, very key. And as you're going to see in a moment, I'm going to give you a model of the key elements of what that conversation looks like. Formal feedback, as I said, it's more organized. It's documented. That is probably the biggest difference. We worked with United Airlines. And one of the things that was most interesting to us is that when we were looking at sort of all the different processes, and they had informal and formal feedback. The problem was every informal feedback that they had, which was a casual conversation, was documented. And so they would have a quick conversation with someone, then go away and write it up, and they'd send a copy to an employee and send a copy to HR. And what we had to get across to them was, hey guys, guess what? That's formal. When you document and write something down, it's not a casual conversation. You're not invested in trying to help them in a very unofficial way. It's once you formulate it or formalize it, it becomes very, very different in the employees' minds. So I want you to keep that in mind. Think about formal versus informal and whether or not you have a culture of informal feedback within your organization. And so how do you tell? Well, informal feedback is something that I've spent a lot of time years ago kind of studying and trying to understand the characteristics. And there's a lot of research out there about it. But when it comes to informal feedback, there are certain things that you must be able to do. So I want to put it out to you guys. I'd love to hear from some of you what you think when you're having this casual conversation. What do you think the key characteristics are that is going to make it effective? So let's kind of pull some of you out there. All right, Melissa, you just kind of disappeared on me. I was going to call on you. Let's see, who else is out there going through that? Yelena, are you out there? Yelena, you want to come off mute? Okay, there we go. I heard something. Nope.
I'm here, Shane.
Hey, Melissa, there you go. You are back. All right, Melissa, if you're going to give effective informal feedback, what do you think the keys are? What do you think you can do to make that effective?
I try to always give something positive first, something good that they're doing. I think that leads them into a good mind space, because otherwise it's automatically, when they meet with you, they just think that it's something negative and that they need to work on. So
Awesome.
There's usually something positive that I try to, point out or compliment them on.
All right, good. I like that. It's a good one. Claudia, what about you? I see you there. Give us some insights. What do you think is key to effective informal feedback?
Actually, I think it's really important to the feedback, but I think it's better the formal feedback, because you can make a statistic, or sometimes the people are not really clear about what is the objective, the goals about all the work, because probably I'm really friendly and okay, you are very nice and everything, but what is my goal? How can I measure?
Great. I love that. You're going to see, very important. when you give feedback, they need to know why. What is the purpose of the feedback and objective? So that's a really good one. All right, who else? We got Michael in there. He's my culture expert there. Michael, give us what do you think one of the things that you can do to be effective with your feedback? You hiding in there, Michael? I know you're there.
Hi, Shane.
There you are.
Yeah, I adopt the sandwich method. And so I begin by telling them the positives, and then I tell them areas of opportunities for them, and then I crown it with some positive as well. Okay,
good. I like this. We got some good ones. So let's kind of dig into this. And I want to make sure that you understand these are informal feedbacks. These are quick, casual conversations. So a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, be fair and balanced. Balanced means positive and negative. A couple of you said that's really important. You want to make sure that there's balance. They're hearing good things and bad things. A lot of employee feedback will say that the only time they ever get feedback is when something goes wrong. So I love that both of you, or a couple of you already mentioned that. Make it timely. Timely is critical. Giving informal feedback days afterward is ineffective. You need to give it within the day and preferably in the moment. So this is what we often talk about, being in the operation to be able to observe your employees at work. Be personal, which means make it personal. Use names. Don't keep the formality in there, but make it personal. This is a connection. Great coaches are very relationship driven. As Claudia said, be specific. Tell them why. Why are we giving you this feedback is such an important piece. Often we give feedback without positioning why it's happening or why or what we're doing it for. So really important. Remember, get your emotions away. Sometimes as a manager, we get pretty frustrated. We can get really heated. If you're feeling emotional, do not give the feedback. Walk away. Then give yourself a couple of minutes and then come back. Do not give informal feedback when there's emotional. And here's the big thing. Managers, ask questions, don't give lectures. That's probably one of my favorite things to remind managers about. When all we do is deliver a lecture, guess what? Our employees will start to block us out because they're sick of hearing our voice. I often talk about Charlie Brown's teacher, Miss Othmar. And again, if you've ever heard Charlie Brown's teacher, she always sounds like wah, 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 wah. Well, guess what? Managers that only lecture sound like that to their employees. So keep that in mind. Ask questions, and we'll show you how to do that. And remember, always say thank you at the end. Always be thankful for their efforts. So these are the key elements that we have looked at over the years that is key for informal feedback, casual conversation. Now we apply this to a model. And this is something that we've put out there. It's part of our package that we hand off to people and we share this. But it's a 5-step model that we use to teach all young managers how to give informal feedback. And again, if you're interested, again, as Abraham will talk, we have a whole toolkit of stuff that we give out, and we have a whole little piece on this, how to give informal feedback. So it's kind of nice. But let me just go through quickly these 5 steps. First, give the reason for the feedback. All right, we've already talked about that. That's the opening line. And remember, be personal, so use the name. Hey, do you remember we've been focusing on our values right now? Or do you remember us talking about safety? Or do you remember we talked about customer experience? Always orient the person towards why. Second, what did you see? What was observed? What was heard? It's very important. Be specific. Remember, that was one of our rules. Now you'll start to see 2, 3, 4. See that there's a question. Do you remember sending the email? Do you recall the interaction? Do you remember you saying that? Orient them to put the pressure on them. The 3rd and 4th step for me is the most important part of feedback, and it's 2 critical questions. 3, what was the impact? So how do you think the customer felt in that moment? How do you think your coworker felt? How do you think this had an impact on the business? Always ask them to gauge impact. This is the important. You're shifting the learning onto them. This is where managers, it's easy to be a lecturer. Oh, you did this. This is how they felt. ask the employee what the impact was. That's point 3. The 4th one, then, ask them what they can do better. Don't tell them what they have to do better. Ask them what they're going to do better. Remember, it's their lesson. So what can we deliver a better experience next time? What can you do the next time you're in this situation? What could you do better when you're being put into these circumstances? So ask the question, and you'll notice in each of those, I say, wait for the answer. One of the most important things I think for a good coach is to be patient a little, because you have your answers and you want to give them your answers. So you're ready to jump. You go, wow, this is a quick 1-minute conversation. I'm going to give you a lecture and we're done. Focus on making this a 2 or 3-minute conversation and be willing to ask questions, and the coaching will be more effective. And then my final step I already touched on, please say thank you. This model we have rolled out around the world. It is probably one of the things that we're known for. We do a lot of supervisor-based training. It's the number one thing we focus on. We go focus on coaching, we focus on communication, and we focus on celebration. This piece of it here is where we stop. And if I can tell you one thing, we spend then probably the next hour role playing, because this is something that managers need to practice. So again, like all, if you need to have a copy of this, we can certainly send this out to you as part of our toolkit. Get your managers practicing this model. And again, I promise you, even for you, it might feel a little weird because it feels a little structured. I promise you, this is not about a script. It's about, hey, here's my guide. Always give a reason. What did I observe? Ask the question. What was the impact? Ask the question. What can we do better? That's awesome. Michael, thanks so much for that. Thanks for helping us get better with customers. Move on. Move on. Move on. Now we'll come back to, because this is the question everyone says, well, what happens when an employee, I do this 3 or 4 times and they don't change? That's when you shift to formal feedback. Understand, informal comes before formal. And this is why I will tell you that your coaching and your feedback programs fail. Because a lack of informal feedback is the reason that your formal mechanisms fail. What happens is managers go, you know what? Michael never listens anyway. There's no point in me, having these casual conversations. I'm just going to write it down and I'm going to bring him into my office and we're going to write it and it's formal. What happens is you lose that coaching opportunity. You lose that relationship. And what we see in so many organizations is managers jump to the step of, well, I'm going to write it down because they don't listen to me anyway. Well, they don't listen to you because you lecture. They don't listen to you because you don't have a relationship. And what happens is it becomes this vicious circle. What we try to teach, and this is why when we do supervisor training, the one skill that we teach them is informal feedback. And so that's why I wanted to kind of put this out there. I really urge you, as you're thinking about maybe some of your supervisors or managers, how well you've taught them that skill of informal. So I want to kind of put that out. We have a lot of other stuff on this, but I wanted to bring it up because it's such a passion point for me and it's a point of failure. Now I want to take you into where I focus a lot of managers. Now it's like, all right, let's talk formal now. Let's take that shift. And what I wanted to do with you today is I want to take you through what we call our coaching grid. And those of you that, again, probably a little older like myself will remember a gentleman called Jack Welch. He called the 4 types of managers. It was a 2001 business report that he put out. And it's something that I always kind of put out there because it's the simplest and easiest way to get across some of the ideas I want to talk about with you now, which is for every employee you have, every manager that's under you, you should have a coaching plan. So coaching plan, informal, informal, informal. It's always informal, informal. However, when it comes to formal, you need a coaching plan. You need to know what your employees or managers need from you. And so over the years, we've looked at a lot of different models. And by the way, there's a whole shift towards don't rate your employees. I get it. I know why it's happening. And yet in the basis, everyone rates employees. And the purpose of this is not to rate an employee, but to understand what they need from you. And that's what a good coach does. They understand for each of their players what they need from them, because each player is slightly different. All right. So this is what this kind of does. So it's called the 4 types of managers by Jack Welch. We've evolved it to the 4 types of employees. And The reason I love this is it aligns up really well with our definition of performance. Performance is what? Do they deliver results? How do they live by our values? This is the 4 types of employees. So we have employee 1, delivers results, lives by our values. So not only they deliver what, but they deliver it the right way. Person 2 struggles to deliver the results, but lives by our values, strong team player, very likable, but doesn't get the results we need. That's type 2. Type 3, remember Michael I talked about before, delivers great results, our top salesperson, doesn't live by the values, is a bit of a jackass, not a great team player. So they deliver results, but they don't deliver the how. So that's my type 3. And then my final one is a type 4, which is they don't deliver results and they don't live by your values. So that's a pretty easy kind of thing to understand. It's like, okay, what do we do with those people? So I want to kind of put it out. So please, we're going to try this. Everyone come off mute. So everyone just come off mute. So again, I want to kind of have a bit of a madhouse in this. Just come off mute if you want to kind of participate, because we're going to do a kind of a quick fire kind of piece here. So come off mute if you want to be involved, so that way I can call upon you quickly. Okay, so let's develop a coaching plan. So I'm going to go. All right, Cheryl, you're off. So you're up first for me. Cheryl, you've got a type 1. They deliver great results for you. They live by their values. How would you coach a type 1 person?
Well, I would initially, ask them to sit down with me and have a chat with them. It'd probably be a pretty easy conversation. I would start off positive, recognizing their pluses and, praise them for doing that, and maybe involve them and ask them how could they view themselves as growing even further from where they're at.
Awesome job. Your coaching plan, as you said, it's all about recognition. And we're going to talk about the different ways you can recognize. But for this person, you need a recognition plan. And so as we're going to talk about in a few moments, how and why and in the different ways you're going to recognize them, what I often find is that managers don't know or worked out who their best players are and have a recognition plan for them. They rely on employee of the month or something there, but a good leader will have a very specific plan about how to best recognize your 1. So that's the first one. So good, I got it. We got recognition. Now let's go to our type 2. All right, let's go. Who's off there? Everyone stay off mute. I wanted to see who's there. Who's coming off mute? You all went back on. All right, Michael, you get the type 2. Doesn't deliver great results, but lives by your values, is a great team player. Michael, how would you coach this person?
Well, I would start first by praising him for living the values. And also I'd want to find out from him what the challenges are for not being able to deliver good results. And then I'll thank him for the feedback he's given me, the challenges he's having. And then, I give him some coaching advice on how to get good results.
I like the approach. I want to be really clear on my 2s. My 2s get the recognition. What they need from you and your coaching plan is training, tools, and information. Those of you that joined 2 webinars ago, we talked about enable and engage, and we spent time talking about training, tools, and information. The person that's not delivering results, you have to work out, do they have the training to do the job? Have you given them enough training? Maybe we need to give them a little bit more. Do they have the tools to do the job? Which means if they're not getting the results, are they using the tools wrong? Do they have access? And maybe is it an information issue? You want to address those 3. And then generally it's a training issue. You want to fix that. And then you put them on a training program where you might say, hey, you know what, Michael, for the next 30 days, I'm going to team you up with Melissa there, and we're going to give you a little bit of extra training to try and get the right results. What I want to be really clear is with your coaching program for 2s, it doesn't go on forever. You can't train them forever. And so what happens is at the end of the 30 days, in a perfect world, your 2s move to 1s. If they haven't though, if after giving them the tools, information, and more training, they're still not able to give the right results, but they live by your values, What do you think you should do for them? Come on, everybody, take off. If you want to get involved in this conversation, come off mute. Because again, I want to be able to see who wants to answer some questions for me here. So who's going to be next on this one? I know Cheryl's still there. Cheryl, what would you do if after 30 days they didn't deliver the results?
I think I would try two things. First, I would get their input, what maybe they feel are their stumbling blocks, and possibly move to more of a formal approach.
Great. As I said, I think you're on the right. The number one thing that I'll ask you to do is I want you to think about for this person is whether or not they're in the right job. They're good people, great team. They buy into the organization. Sometimes we put good people in bad positions, meaning we ask them to do a job that they're not suited to. If I look back through all my experience, at this point when you go, gosh, I've given them the training, they've got the tools, they got the information, they got everything they need to succeed, but they're not doing it, guess what? I might have them in the wrong role. And so what we generally find then is that the coaching plan shifts to, do we have a role better suited for them? As I said, you cannot keep holding on to these people forever. You want to, but you can't. So I want you to think about those twos. Give them the benefit of the doubt, give them the training, but understand sometimes maybe you've got them in the wrong role, and maybe within your organization you can find a better role for them. So keep that in mind for our twos. All right, everybody come off mute again. You're all sitting there hiding on mute. I want to talk about our threes because the threes are my favorites. All right, so let's think about our threes here. They deliver the results. Remember my salesman earlier. They do that, but they don't live by the values. They approach things differently. Melissa, you're there. Come off mute. I know you can. You got some ideas here. Julian, you're next. So come off mute. Melissa, you there? Bum bum. What about Tony or Sanderson? You guys there? You want to come off mute? Where's everybody disappearing to? You guys there? All right, Cheryl, you staying off mute. You're my A student right now. Claudia, you're next. So I know you can come off. All right, Cheryl, what do we do with our type threes?
Well, they're delivering results is what you ultimately want, but maybe they need to redefine the value.
Not going to change the values for these people. As I said, these people deliver results, but they don't live by your values. They're not good team players. Claudia, what do you think? I say, Tony, did you just come off there? Was that you?
Yeah,
Tony,
I
what
want
do you
to
think?
I want to give it a shot.
Tony.
Yeah. First of all, I think I'll have to recognize them for delivering the great results and commend them.
Great.
And then bring it home to them that in as much as they are delivering the results, the process of delivering the results are equally important as the results themselves, and get them to align them to the values within the organization.
You nailed it. Again, the difference between what you talked about, Cheryl, and that is that the company's not going to change their values or the idea of being a good person to get the results. What they're going to tell this person is, listen, we love that you're giving us results, but you have to have a tough conversation with them. Tough conversation is, listen, we love that you deliver the results we want, but you got to deliver it the right way as well. And as you're going to talk, I'll talk about it very briefly here. Tough conversations is another skill that a lot of managers aren't that good at. They don't like the confrontation. And as we'll say, it doesn't mean it's a bad conversation, but it's a tough one, which means we are supporting our values. We support teamwork. We support how we treat people in the workplace. And guys, if you're out there today and still wondering if this is important, this is the most important thing. Unbiased, prejudice, all these things going on in our workplace, it's about bringing humanity and treating people right. And if someone can't do that, and this is the important one, and this is why Jack Welch said these are the toughest people to manage. If they're not willing to live by that, then they shouldn't be part of your organization. And again, if you go back to the webinar when I talked about values, about why they are so important, your coaching program for this person, and by the way, these people are really smart. It means that over a period of time, they've probably got away with stuff. There's been double standard. So bringing them back into line is generally not that hard. Unfortunately, some people have been getting away with this for so long that it becomes really difficult. So you have to be a little tough with that and obviously a little firm. So remember that with your 3s. Then our final one is our 4s. I'm just seeing if there's anyone else. Ud, buddy, you're up. What would you do with a 4?
Okay, so for me, for the 4, you just fire them. It's as simple as that.
Dude,
Just
I love it. Just be simple as that.
Exactly.
Make a tough decision. You can't tolerate someone who's a 4. And this is the important thing, is that, you know, Sanderson, I think, put it really simply, but it's really hard for some people. I'm gonna make a very generalized statement here, so please forgive that this doesn't apply perfectly. But I will tell you that in your organization, you have 25% of people that are 1s naturally. They are superstars. They have strong work ethic. They'll just kick butt. You probably have 5% that sit into this 4 group. They don't give a damn about you. They don't give a damn about your business. It's just a job. Now, that leaves 70% of your organization sitting what I call in the middle. Now, what the people in the middle do is they look at the 1s and they go, is there any benefit for me to work harder? Which means if you're not recognizing your people, then there's no benefit. There's no incentive. All the people on the fence are going, well, there's really no point in working any harder. They're not like they get any recognition or reward. Then they look at the 4s. And they look for accountability and they go, wow, there's no accountability for being a jackass in this company. So why should I work any harder? I will tell you that this is the tipping point between an organization that performs at a high level, meaning they have 95% of their people performing above. It doesn't mean that they're 1s, but they perform at a high level, versus an organization that struggles, having 75% of their people underperforming. It's a generalization, but I want you to think about that. It's really important that you start to think about your coaching plan. The problem is you spend too much time with your 4s. Think about the person that you might think is a 4 right now, how much time you spend documenting and coaching them and spending time with, but you don't spend enough time with your 1s. You don't have these tough conversations here. You're not thinking about the training that's needed up here. That's why I love this grid. It's simple, it's basic, but it's a heck of a great way to think about how you're coaching your people today. And again, I find it quite beneficial. So I want to jump in to a little bit about just talking about recognition, because there was some really cool stuff we've learned over the years that I find quite valuable. We all know recognition is important. I'm going to just assume you're all a high five on that. You get that. The question then becomes, why do so many employees think that we don't recognize them? Because that's the piece. I speak to pretty much all managers and they say, I do a great job of saying thank you to my people. I talk to employees, we've got research, we've got data, and they say, yeah, my managers aren't that good at it. So there is, what we've learned over the years, a disconnect between employees and managers about recognition. So we started to dig into this, and I want to talk about the VAC model. What is the VAC model? The VAC model is a learning model about how people process information. All right, it's been around for a while. It's very basic: visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. The VAC model for learning, and again, this is a very simplified version. It's evolved a little bit, but the VAC model has been a foundation of learning for many, many years. Unfortunately, it also explains why our school systems have failed over the years. So I want you to think about VAC. Basically, VAC says there are 3 main ways that people process information. We have visual learners. They need to see something to be able to process it. We have auditory learners. They need to hear it to be able to process it. And then we have our kinesthetics. They need to feel it by touching, feeling. That's how they learn. They're hands-on, which is probably the statement. Now, my question to you guys out there, so again, I want to find someone else to answer this. How do you think this model has an impact on how we understand recognition? I've just talked about how people process information. It's the VAC. How do you think now, or what does this tell us about recognition? Who wants to take a stab at this one? This is an important one for everybody to kind of think about. How does this impact recognition? Cheryl, you want to take a stab at it?
Well, I think you need to present information to your team in the best way that they know how to learn. If that's the
Yep.
best way they're going to absorb it.
So how does that impact how you should recognize people?
Well, you should recognize, say if they're visual, maybe you want to give them some type of a certificate or something that they can actually look at and show their accomplishment.
Awesome. Good. Keep going. What about a kinesthetic person?
They're a little bit of both. So you want to give them a little bit of verbal and something visual.
Or, as I'm going to show you, do something with them. So Cheryl, you started to get here. This is such an important piece. First of all, people process recognition differently. That's the number one thing you got to learn and remember. So what I find is managers go, I say thank you every day to my employees. Here's the thing I'm going to teach you now. Auditory learners is the smallest group of learners in the world, probably only about 13%. Only about 13% of your people process information by listening. Now, the managers are out there going, I'm saying thank you every day. I'm saying thank you every day. Well, guess what? Only 13% of your people process it. That is why we have the disconnect. Visual people, they're the next group. They sit at about 30%. So they like to see stuff. So we're very good at doing certificates or writing emails to them. So they're taken care of. The biggest group of learners in the world are kinesthetics. Over 50% of people learn by touching and doing. So when you say something or send an email to them, it's not often realized. So we have to have a coaching plan of say, write, or do. I want to make sure you understand, say, write, or do. Verbally recognize employees. Now, there's actually some tests out there. I think we might have it in our toolkit. It's a one-page test to learn whether or not someone's a visual, auditory, or a kinesthetic learner. So it's kind of interesting, but let's just say you don't have that. What you want to be able to understand is that some people are good at verbal. And so what you want to understand is one-on-one and informal feedback is really probably the best way to do it. But understand with our people that like to hear it, they like to hear it in certain ways. Do they like it one-on-one in front of a small group or in front of the whole company? Some people get a little nervous when you recognize them in front of a large group. So when it comes to verbal recognition, always understand how people like to be verbally recognized. So that should be part of your coaching plan. Remember, have a recognition plan for each of your managers or employees. So that's a really key piece. One of the things that our kinesthetics, in fact, all of them like to do is they like to hear or have a conversation about their development and career. This is actually a really important recognition. So you taking some time out to sit down with someone and say, hey, let's talk about your career is actually seen by many employees as a type of recognition. So understand, this isn't about big rewards, big prizes, and all of that. This is about the little things that you can do on a day-to-day basis that will have a big impact. All right, write our recognition. Obviously, this is where we can start writing personal Post-it notes, personal notes, certificates. All of these things have an impact. And I will tell you that the personal note, people might say I'm old-fashioned, but I still think it has a lot of quality and it has a lot of worth. Just taking time to write it out. In the Ritz world, every week, we have a habit of every Friday, we sat down and wrote a personal note to someone who did something really cool for that week. And it was a habit that we continue to do today. I continue to write personal notes every day or every week. The one story I'll tell you that has always stood out is don't be afraid to spend your personal notes home. I'll tell you that it's a pretty powerful piece. Whenever you can recognize someone in front of their family, you have tremendous impact in terms of the emotional feelings that you can take to somebody. I'll tell you the story. I was a housekeeping director. Again, I had about 120, 130 ladies and gentlemen under me, and I had a houseman, a young guy. He was 20 years old, going on 21. I got to say, he was definitely a 3, possibly a 4, certainly got into enough trouble. I'd met his parents at the Christmas party about 3 or 4 months before this, and they were really concerned. He wasn't married, had a child on the way. Just wasn't sure, and this was an important job for him. Anyway, we ran into short staffing. The kid stepped up. He was working around the clock, just, you know, for 2 weeks, kicked butt, was there. It was like really impressive. And I remembered that I'd met his parents, and I said, you know what, I'm going to send them a note and just say, hey, you know, Jose's doing a great job. This is awesome. So I did that, didn't think much of it, put it in the post, and they received it. Anyway, one morning I walk in, and this kid was sitting here in my office, which I got to say, he had a habit of doing. And again, I'm going to be honest, my first reaction was, all right, what did you do now? And he looked at me and he said, no, I just wanted to say thank you. And I said, for what? And he says, well, you know that note that you sent to my parents? And I said, yeah, I know. Hopefully that was okay. But I got to know your parents. I thought it'd be cool. He says, I just want to let you know that was the first time they had got anything in writing that I would be worth something. And again, I just want that to sink in for 2 seconds at 21 years old. And he goes on to say, he goes, you know, we had a little celebration last night. I go, really? He goes, I just want to say that really made a difference. I left 2 years later, the kid was a supervisor. That's that moment of like, just everything started to click because I took a moment to write it down. Please make sure when you're writing it down, though, write legibly and spell correctly. I've seen some of the notes that managers have written, and it's pretty hard to tell what it is that you're trying to say. So keep that in mind. And then our kinesthetics. Remember, these people are more sort of touchy-feely. They need a hands-on. So some of the things to think about, high fives, way to go gestures. Some of the cool things, we've done a whole piece of research on, or at least got feedback from large employee groups on what they like. Here's some of the ones. Work alongside them. When a manager works alongside a kinesthetic, recognition. That kind of connects with them. Eating lunch or spending time. We found that the idea of eating coffee or sharing food and beverage was seen as a form of recognition. So we really like that one. Even though you might not be giving them something, that was seen as a form of recognition. Bring them a treat, food, water, favorite snack to them, something small, was really great. This was a cool one. Complete a task they may not like to do. This was seen as something that kind of had a meaning. Getting in, doing something that they don't like doing. So you go in, it takes you half an hour to do it. That's a way of you saying thank you to them. And then, of course, something, a small gift, form of reward. They like to feel something. So something to think about with our kinesthetic. So I really want to kind of, have you think about say, write, do. I really want to make sure you have a plan for your ones. As I sort of said, this is not about employee, manager of the months, big programs. You have to have a great small program. So make sure you have this for your ones. We talked about twos, all right? Enable them. Remember, and again, if you remember the webinar, please go back and look at our notes from Enable and Empower. We talked a lot about how to enable through information, tools, and training. Make sure you spend some time on that. It's such an important part of this process. Give them time, but also recognize, don't be afraid to ask whether or not you've got them in the right role. Tough conversations. We have a whole program. We actually have a sheet of how to have great, tough conversations. There are some rules and guidelines. I will say this, and I love this. Peter Bromberg nails this quote so well. When we avoid difficult conversations, we trade short-term discomfort for long-term dysfunction. Short-term discomfort, having a tough conversation with someone can be a little uncomfortable. We get it, but it is part of your role as a leader. Because if you don't, long-term dysfunction. What happens is you allow those threes to get away with their BS behavior, and it impacts tremendously the team around you. So please have those tough. And then, as I said, hold your poor performers accountable. Jack Welch, he had this quote, which again, I think just captures it perfectly. I was a gardener providing water and other nourishment to my top performers, recognize. Of course, I had to pull a few weeds out every now and again. Sometimes you make that tough decision. You got to pull a few weeds out every now and again for the good of the team. It's something that we all need to think about. So I want to there was a lot I wanted to cover in this session today. And again, we have so much content that sits around, but I really wanted to kind of stress this whole idea of being a great coach. understand informal versus formal feedback, understand the importance of having a coaching plan for each of your managers or direct reports, understanding some of the things we've learned about recognition, and just to stress the idea that sometimes making a tough decision or having a tough conversation is sometimes the best thing you can do as a leader to truly make a difference on the hearts and minds of your people. When you don't hold people accountable, it infects and it affects the morale of the people around them. We know it, we've seen it, it's so clear. And what is most interesting, in the last year, we've focused a lot. We have a whole culture assessment that we do. And we've seen over the last year that accountability has become one of the most important mechanisms for younger employees. They get really annoyed when you don't hold the jackass accountable. It makes their lives more difficult. It just makes the environment more painful. And they really get annoyed when you have a set of values that you don't hold everyone to. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about this. At the end of the day, coaching for me, probably one of the most important mechanisms and moments that you have as a leader impact culture. And as a result of that, I really urge you all to think about, one, how you're coaching, what plans, what things you've got in place, but hopefully take some of this information, share it with your team, get them involved in it, even if it's just starting to give better informal feedback, starting to think a little bit about maybe some of your managers, how to work with them. But I really urge you to make this a priority right now and make it just part of those behaviors and those processes that every good manager should adhere to. So I know it was a lot. I moved quickly, but I really wanted to share lots of stuff with you guys today. And as I said, I appreciate you kind of checking in. So we do have a little bit of time, which is awesome. So I do want to open up comments, questions. Anybody kind of want to add their thoughts on coaching or feedback? So again, if anyone wants to kind of reach out, Melissa, you're off. You're not on mute. So anything you want to add to our conversation today?
I just absolutely love your presentations. I learned so much every time. So I'm just so grateful for you.
Thank you, Melissa. I love it that you keep coming back, and hopefully, as the city said, honestly, it works. So thank you. Anyone else got any thoughts that they would add to about coaching feedback, things that they've found that works for them, that they would like to add to that? Obviously, I'm not the only one with some information to share. So anybody else come up there? Oh, good. Claudia, you came off mute. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much, because today I learned a lot about coaching. I cannot participate. I didn't, because I don't have a lot of experience, and probably I was afraid about to make a mistake. But I have a lot of information, and I want to know more about that. But thank you.
Good. Listen, I appreciate that. And again, I saw a couple of issues on our chat. Daniel, thanks so much for weighing in on that. I really appreciate that. Let's see who's out there. Cheryl, any comments? You're off mute.
Yes, I so appreciate that you see things from the human point of view, like the appreciation for your people and to treat them with respect and be able to have those conversations, tough ones, and still keep it on a very professional level. And that is such a thing I strive for. And it seems in my past experiences, this is not even in the realm of thought. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. I love that, sharing that. Tony, I see you're off mute. Any thoughts to add?
Yeah.
Any advice for the group?
Yeah, thank you, Shane. I think the presentation is awesome. But I wanted a question on one of the points you made earlier on when we were discussing the 4 types of employees.
Yep.
Now, with a type B, whereby the person doesn't deliver, but they live by the value. I think you made a point to the effect that sometimes you can recommend, probably the person in the wrong role, you can recommend for a new role to be given. My question is, if within an organization, you make such a recommendation, but then at the point the recommendation was made, there's no such vacancy within any of the department to accommodate such a person, what happens? Do you retain him or her in the role where he or she is not delivering, or you kick the person out?
Yeah, listen, it's fantastic. And again, I don't say this are right or wrong. Here's what I would say. I think you kind of said, listen, I think values are so critical. And again, Tony, if you were in our earlier webinar, you know, it's always important to refresh and look at your values and make sure that they are supportive of the way that you do business. And while we use values, what I would say more broadly is whether or not they're a good person. Are they the type of person that's a good team player? Are they a person that does care for other people? And in that simplest terms, that for me, out of everything, directs that decision of what to do with them. I don't believe if you're not a good person to those around you in today's environment, I really am not afraid to make that tough decision that this is not the place for you. It doesn't mean that they can't perform better elsewhere. And it doesn't mean that they won't be successful. What it does is I often find when I'm building the culture and we're working with different organizations to drive their culture, obviously there's a lot of change that goes on. And if they're not willing to open up their minds and get on board and be supportive, and I go back to it, be a good person, then I often find that that tough decision is made easier because for the good of the overall group. Having said that, I think there is a place where you start to go, do our values and the way that we operate, how we operate, fulfill and let us be successful today. I think it's an interesting time. Obviously, there's a lot going on, virus and everything that's going on in the world. I think it's even more important that we take a time every now and again and sit back and go, okay, how we operate. Is this the right way? Because I think values can be evolved. And what we're learning, and if I can say millennials probably taught us this more than anything. Millennials came in, some of you fall into that category. You came in, you looked at the rules of how business was getting done and you said, this is stupid. You know what, this is wrong. You know what, you guys are not doing it the right way. And so they actually started to kind of, for the first time, you had a group of workers say, I'm out of here. Now, what happened was the managers started labeling the millennials as unloyal. They haven't got a strong work ethic. They're bad people. All of this kind of snowballed. What should have happened and what happened in some organizations is they looked at their values and says, you know what? These millennials coming in have got some really good ideas. We need to evolve our business and how we do things to be more tech focused, to be smarter, more creative, more innovative, take more risk. So that was what I call a really pivotal time in organizations that happened about 10 years ago. What I'm interested in is I think this is another pivotal time where how you do work is evolving. People are going to work from home more, remote workforce, gig economy is bigger than ever before and is only getting bigger. So I think it's a really interesting time, particularly with our Gen Zs coming into the workplace. They are activists. They have a very strong work ethic. They're a fantastic group. But I think this is a wonderful time that we've got to be careful of seeing someone and labeling them as a bad worker just because they're willing to challenge how things get done. So, Tony, that's a great question. And I've actually done a lot into this of how these pivotal points in culture have shifted with new generations of workers. And so I caveat by saying, listen, if they're not a good person, there's no room for them. But if it's the fact that they're challenging how we do business and thinking of better ways to do business, and for instance, right now, people are saying, you know what, it's no longer acceptable to be biased in the workplace. It sounds simple, but we've now got employees standing up and going, this is absolutely not acceptable. Unfortunately, some of those people are being labeled as bad. So really loaded question, great one. I hope they gave you a little bit of insight, but no replacement, that if they're not a good person and good team player, get them out. However, let's look at our pivot right now in terms of the world and ask ourselves how we do business. Is this the time to look at it a little differently? So good stuff.
Well, Shane, I also like to add that in some cases, you need to look at the VAC again. I mean, depending on the person's learning style, you could have probably placed the person or given the wrong assignment to that individual. And so we need to look at that again.
Yeah, listen, you hit it. That's why I said before, maybe they're just in the wrong position or role. So look at how you're doing the training and all of that. The VAC model, again, it's so simple. And again, there's a lot more complicated learning modules. Believe me, this isn't the end all, but it really does give us a nice way to think about how we approach training, how we approach recognition. So good point. Listen, great stuff, everybody. I feel great that you allowed me to cover such huge ground, but also apologize if it seemed a little rushed. I'm always conscious that learning from the fire hose isn't always the best way to do it. particularly for you kinesthetics that have tuned in, as I sort of said, that's not your best way to learn. But we have, obviously, from being able to visually see it, hear me, and we do have some tools in that obviously, if this is something that you're interested in, we can probably definitely share with you. So Abraham has got all of that type of stuff. So Abraham, I'm going to give it back over to you to wrap this up.
All right, thank you, Shane. So about the toolkit, I put the link for that in the chat over here. And for those of you that qualify for that, please feel free to take us up on that offer there. I just wanted to, Shane, do we have a little bit of time to go over? We had a couple.
We got a quick one because I know everyone's running to other meetings.
Yeah. So I just want
running to another session.
Find out if from the people here, what we want to have you do is implement what Shane is teaching you. It's just not to sit here and listen. And I mean, it's obvious if that's what you want to do, that's your business. But I think you've spent this time here. It's your time, and your time is valuable. You want to get the most out of it and go take this and put it into action. So I asked a couple of our regulars here, they couldn't make it this time. They let me know they weren't able to make it, but I asked them, hey, did you implement what happened last week? And they said, yeah, I did. So I'd be happy to share with you what they said. Anybody would like to hear that? Just let me know in the chat or just raise your hand. That'd be okay. Can I share that with you? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So if you have to go, we understand. So just real quick right here, I just put it on a little Google Doc. Hang on, I'm going to share that with you here. Where'd it go? All right, let's just go over here. Here, this is the where we got the whole toolkit right here. When you click that link there. But let me go to here. So, all right. So I asked, were you able to implement what you learned last week? This was to Kobe, and he says, hey, I have been. He actually did, especially the part of how we recognize people so they see what their contributions did to help the team meet its objectives. So I asked her, hey, that's great. How was it received? So Kobe says that most are really receptive to it, but others are still trying to figure out why I kept relating back to the goals. Overall, I think it had an impact. And next week when I'm touring stores, I'll sit down with each manager and explain to them so they'll do the same with their staff. So I asked them, so why do you think they were trying to figure out why you kept keep relating back to the goal? He says they're not accustomed to that kind of recognition. So in their minds, it's strange because it's new. So then when I referred back to what Shane had when he spoke about this new normal and how to, with leadership and how do we do work within this, especially if you're a leader and we don't know this whole Corona and how we're. So Shane spoke about curiosity. I said, Shane talks a lot about curiosity as a key leadership trait in this new normal. Hey, good time to be curious. And so Kobe said he agreed. So he'll hopefully be back next week and we'll find out more from him.
Hey, Abraham, just to say, and again, Kobe, I've got a coaching call with him this week. So again, he took us up on, I think, the offer that you've put out. So I'm excited to talk with Kobe. He's got some questions. So again, everybody, you've got an opportunity that if you kind of fit and qualify, that we can sit down and really ask some one-on-one. So I know I'm meeting up with Kobe that, hey guys, I've got another session. I'm walking into another session. So again, I'm going to leave you. Hopefully I see you all next week. We're going to talk communication. So thank you all for today. Abraham, wrap them up, but we'll see you all next week. Cheers.
Okay. Thank you, Shane. Appreciate that. So I'll just go ahead after Shane, he's taken off here, and I'll just tell you what Chris had to say when I say, hey, how'd you do? He says, this was an easy change for us. See, a lot of this stuff doesn't have to be difficult. You just do it, take action, and you'll get feedback from that. So, because we were talking about today about feedback. So this was an easy change for us, and we often have opportunities to share kudos, positive feedback for our team members. The immediate change is now adding a statement to show how their efforts have directly supported one or multiple of the company values. It helps reiterate how they are helping the company and then brings our company values to life on a daily basis. So this very much relates to what Shane was talking today about and how you get people to relate to your company goals through this recognition process. So you see the stuff that Shane's teaching is working, so very exciting. And really, if everyone here who would like to be able to please go and implement this stuff, let me know. Send me an email. I'll share this with other people because you're ultimately helping other people to feel more confident about doing and taking action if you share that with us. So I want to stop sharing here and thank you guys all for coming. and really appreciate it. We have another webinar, CH Culture Hacker 8 is going to be next week. And our same bat time and bat channel over here, if you guys remember Batman, right? We'll look forward to seeing you there. We have people that are coming regularly. We're very excited about it. And also, we're going to take a little break after that. Shaq and I are here in Israel, and we're going to our holiday seasons. In fact, Oud here is from the United Arab Emirates, and we just made peace with them yesterday. So it's amazing, you know, may there be more peace in the world. Thank you, Oud, for coming and joining us, especially you. And, you know, I hope you continue to come back, you know, to us and all you folks there. And it's just you know, even though we're in some real challenging times, you know, there are still great opportunities for us to get together. This is a global event right here. People all over the world. I'm still going to work on that fufu. Okay, Michael, you know, we're getting some recipes here from, Tony, you're from Ghana too. You know about the fufu?
Maybe we should bring you some. We should bring you some.
All right.
I do. I know about fufu.
All right, man. Is it as good as Michael's talking about?
Oh, yes, it is. It is very, very good.